sometimes you get these teeny weeny little seams that you have to stitch. And this one is on an angle, on a very narrow piece. So that can be a little bit tricky to cut because you've got this long piece that you're cutting on an angle. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So I've placed my number 1 piece of fabric in place, and I have trimmed the, folded and trimmed the seam allowance all around, as you can see. And we're going to do this number 2 piece here. So I've got my piece of fabric, which is the 1.5 inch strips that we cut for the text, because it's a, they both are text pieces. Whoops, that's upside down, both text pieces. So I'm going to place this piece of text fabric right side down. And then I'm going to place this number 2 piece section over here, making sure that I obviously have seam allowance on this side and seam allowance on this side. So as you can see, there's quite ample here because we're just cutting a little skinny piece. And I've got enough at the back over here. And then what you're going to do is you're going to fold it on that seam line. It's already folded from when I trimmed the seam allowance. So it's already prepped for me. And then you just nudge that out to let that little piece tuck out. And then you're going to use your add a quarter ruler on the ridge side, and you place it on there and you cut it. And that's pretty much it. It's very simple because now you have the correct angle. Now you can, hold it exactly in place and go to the sewing machine, or you can just take it with you in 2 different pieces. When you get to the machine, you're just going to place it on there, and then you're going to do the fold test to see if you've got your seam allowances lined up, but you need to know where it is located in here to get it correctly placed. So we're going to do the fold test, and as you fold it, you can see that when it's stitched in place, you're going to have all of this space here for seam allowance and all of this space here for seam allowance. You've got plenty all the way around, so we know we're good. So we'll just keep that there in that place there. And I'm going to go and stitch it now. Okay, so we have our piece. It's still lined up. I'm just going to turn it over and just check that your seam allowances are still lined up nicely. And you can even see on the fold lines here that the positioning is still okay. And because this is such a teeny little seam, I'm going to set my stitch length on just over 1. And you're going to do exactly the same as normal. You start a little bit before this line here. You're going to back into it, stitch along the line, and then back into it. So you're going about a half an inch basically. So there you can see it, and it's perfect. Just needs to be trimmed down. So just give it a quick roll to seam press. Now before you trim down the size of the seam allowance here, left and right, this is a very good example of a time to baste. You don't want to baste every single piece you do, obviously, because otherwise you're going to have glue or stitching to remove at the end. But in situations like this, where the proportion of the seam that's attaching the fabric to the length of that, it just makes it very wobbly. So this is a situation where I would actually glue baste, and you don't need much, just a little teeny bit, just to keep it in check. And then we just trim it down. And also when you're trimming, because it's such a tiny piece, take care not to move it and budge it over. I was trying not to there, because you can push it out of place quite easily when it's such a little skinny thing. It doesn't have much to attach it to the other piece. So there you go, all neat and tidy.